In this lesson, we'll get our parallax material onto the floor surface. So in order to get this done, we'll need to go back to XSI and export our floor surface into the Ogre mesh format, and we'll need to get some files ready as well, some texture files to be specific. So let's go into XSI and go to the scene where you have the floor set up. Just export the floor mesh. So with the mesh selected, let's go to File, Export, Ogre Mesh and Skeleton. In here we need to define where we want to put it. Since we have our project folder set, we'll place it in there. So click on the ellipse button. Let's go to where we have our project set up. So S drive, Ogre XSI in my case, into my basic app. Let's place this in our models, in our media folder, and then in the models folder. Hit enter. Here's our models folder, so let's put it in here. Let's call the mesh floor. Click OK. Now, instead of going through the trouble of writing that copious amount of code to generate the tangents for us, let's just calculate it right here. Since we're dealing with a very simple mesh that's not animated, the tangents will be generated properly for a simple mesh like that. So we'll just leave that checked on. In the materials, we won't export them or copy the textures. We'll just leave these as, we'll just turn these off. Because we're gonna implement everything ourselves. And we'll just uncheck export vertex animation. We've got everything set up. Don't forget to turn on calculate tangents, otherwise you'll need to go in and rewrite that mesh pointer code stuff again. Click OK. It's exported the mesh. That's good for us. Now let's go into our IDE and add the mesh to our code. We'll go to our create scene code, and right after the animation state and before the creation of the lights, let's add our floor surface. It's going to be just like we've done here, so let's breeze through that real quick. We'll make a new entity. Let's call it entity ent2 is equal to mSceneManager. We'll have it create our entity. I'll just move down this list here. Let's give it a name. Let's call it floor 1, and then we'll set the mesh to the floor mesh. Nice and simple. Now let's create our scene node. So scene node asterisk, we'll just call it node 2, so we can put the entity 2 in the node 2. And we'll make a new child node of the scene root. So once again, we'll use the scene manager and get the root scene node and make an empty child in it, create child scene node. Let's go down to the next line here. And now we'll take our node 2 and attach our entity 2 to it. So attach object entity 2, which is our floor. So we're good to go in that aspect. So let's test this out and see if it's worked. Let's play this out. And it's running. There we go. There's the Ogre render window. It's always nice to see that pop up. And let's move. And now we can see that the plane that we exported, or the grid that we exported from XSI, is right here in the Ogre render window. Pretty cool. But you can see it's shaded white because it doesn't have any material on it. So let's go back to our editor, text editor, and edit our normal parallax mapping material so that we can make a new material that our floor can use. Let's do that by copying all of the material code here for the low-res normal map. We'll just go all the way. I'm just left-click scrolling all the way to select all of these. We'll copy it. So essentially what we're doing is we're more or less duplicating this material. We're selecting all of it and copying it. Then we'll come down here. Let's just put a little bit of a separator here and paste this. So we have another material named low-res normal map. Let's change the name to floor parallax map. There we go. Now in here we'll need to change a couple of the parameters. We'll need to change the NP switch from the value of 0 to 1 so it knows to use the parallax map part of the code. We'll also need to change the textures here. So let's go in and take care of that. We'll need to get the textures from our project folder. So here they are. We have got our floor depth, we've got our floor normal map, and the color map. Now what we're going to do is we're going to combine the depth and the normal into one map. So that way we can just use that as the normal and height map. We need to pass that in here. So let's take advantage of Photoshop and set this up. I'll bring Photoshop up and put these two files in there. I'll copy or open up the depth and then the normal. Now with the normal map here, let's go to the channels tab. Let's click on the new button here to make a new alpha channel. Now what we'll do is we'll take our grayscale information for the depth map and we'll just copy it, Control A and then Control C to copy it. Then we'll go here and into the alpha channel we'll paste it, Control V. So now we have copied the depth map into the alpha channel of our normal map. Now let's save this normal map out. So we'll go to File, Save As, and let's save it as a Targa file. Set it to Targa in the drop down list here, and we'll call it the floor normal height map. So just floor normal height should be just fine. Let's save that. You want to save it as 32 bits per pixel. Click on OK, and there we go. We've got that saved. I'll go ahead and close out Photoshop now. And let's copy the necessary maps. We'll need to copy the color map as well as the floor normal height map that we just made. So with these two selected, let's hit Control C to copy. And let's go to our textures folder in our project. So enter the textures folder and paste it. So they're here. Now we'll go back to our editor and we'll replace the texture names. I'm going to just take the easy way out and I'll just copy the names here. So floor color, F2, Control C to copy that. I'll minimize it. I'll replace that as the texture here. So now I'm saying just use the texture map floor color to shade that ground. Let's repeat the step and I'll take the same name, floor normal height dot targa, and I should have done that here, so I'll just copy that. It's the same name anyway, and paste that in here. So that's our new normal height map. That's all well and good. Now let's save it, Control S, and then let's copy this name so we can set that as the new material for the floor. Control C. Let's bounce back to the IDE, and inside of C++, let's go ahead right after all of this, set the entity 2's material. So entity 2 set material name, in quotes, floor parallax map. And that's what we need to do. And before we run this, let's go ahead and make the floor a bit bigger. So let's type in node 2, set scale, and let's set the scale to something nice and big. So we'll just do vector 3, and I'll set this to maybe 5 by 5 by 5. So we're going to scale it all out equally. And oops, I got a mistake here. I'll just wait for it to discover it. I got an extra comma. There we go. And it's running. And any moment now it'll pull the Ogre window up and we'll be able to move into our scene while taking a look at our parallax map. So here's the parallax map on the surface, and you can see that even though it's just a simple polygon plane, it looks like the surface has a lot of depth to it, and it looks like parts of it are being pushed in while other parts are coming out. And this is coming out more than a level that a normal map can. If you want to see the difference between this and a normal map, it's very easy. We can just close this out, go back to our editor here, and instead of setting the switch from to 1, set it to 0, save it, and then we can run this again, and you'll see there's a marked difference between the two. With just the normal map, it doesn't really look like those little triangle parts over here are coming out. They just kind of look like they're kind of moving outwards, but not as much as the parallax map. If I close this off and run the parallax map code, let me switch the flag from 0 back to 1, save it, and let's rerun the program. You'll be able to see the difference between the parallax map and the normal map. The parallax map will pull out the surface and push it in with a lot more detail than the normal map can. So it's a very good way of faking depth, and it's a very good illusion tool, and it's not very expensive for the look that it gets. So that's how we can integrate XSI and Ogre together. We can get our characters out of XSI into Ogre. And with that, we have reached the end of our training course. We have learned a lot about XSI and how to use it to create and implement assets for next generation type of games. And on behalf of Kyle Green and the rest of Digital Tutors, I'd like to thank you very much for your support, and we hope to see you in the next training kit. Thank you and have a nice day.